So, there's nothing like a good cry. Full disclosure, I'm a crier. I snivel at the drop of a happy or sad ending. I tear up at feats of astonishing human achievement, bravery, loyalty, courage, against the odds survival, redemption, etc. Thinking about it, I tear up at astonishing feats of animal bravery, loyalty, courage, and against the odds survival. Not sure if redemption is actually a thing for animals, although there are some fantastic stories of animals that have gone feral and then been rehabilitated, which have the same kind of tear-making effect. But perhaps a better way of putting it is that I'm easily moved. I hope that means I'm healthily plugged into my emotions, not just at the mercy of a heap of repressed crap that gets triggered by the stuff that I read, see, and listen to. In any case, our experiences, good and bad, shape our responses. Whether they bring smiles, laughter, tears, or even a whopping great punch-up, some are just more socially acceptable than others. I mean, for example, I don't really think a whopping great punch-up is a display of emotion that's possibly on the right track. So, hey peeps, don't try that at home. I'm not promoting it, just mentioning, just saying, as they say. Anyway, in my book, Never Succumb to Beige, and Other Tips for a Colourful Life, I wrote about the benefits of smiling and also laughing with or even at others. But a good cry is up there in the feel-good stakes too. According to Dr. Thomas Dixon, in a recent book where he examined the history of British crying, Weeping Britannia, Portrait of a Nation in Tears. Don't you just love the title? According to Dr. Dixon, weeping is an intellectual activity and yet also a bodily function like vomiting, swearing or farting. Tears seem to fulfill a higher function than just being a vulgar bodily emission, but I guess they're all forms of purging. When you think about it, crying is not just an eruption of our emotional geysers, it's also a way of protecting our eyes from spoilers like onion fumes, what do you call them, onion stings, billowing smoke and particles carried in the wind, because the tears wash them out and protect our eyes. Whatever. I repeat, there is nothing like a good cry, or as my Scottish compatriots would say, a good greet. We have a rich vocabulary around crying. Think about it. Snivelling, tearful, blubbing, wailing, sobbing, weeping, howling, bawling, to name the ones that instantly spring to mind. But like Miss Smilla and all those words for snow, given how essential it is to our well-being, it's a pity that crying publicly is one of the last taboos of our era. It's almost as horrifying as PDA, the old public displays of affection on the pantheon of awful. We make fun of outsized emotions. I mean, God help the celebrity caught crying a river over a broken relationship. The Paps have a field day, and it's nirvana for the wits of the world who conjure meme magic to the schadenfreudistic. Is that a word? Or have I just made it up? I think it should be a word, but if it is, if you haven't heard it before, just, thank you, you heard it first here. Anyway, to the schadenfreudistic delight of all. It hasn't always been like this. We're much more buttoned up than we used to be. From the earliest of times, tears have been associated with mourning rituals that included extreme acting out. That's things like, prostration, excess crying, tearing the hair, ripping clothes, smearing ashes on your face, for example. I'm quite glad that style of mourning has, died a death, but we're far from it being considered good form to break down sobbing if our cappuccino is delivered cold. In the medieval and Tudor world, histrionics were all the rage. People regularly gave their lacrimal glands a workout. Think about beefy old Henry VIII in his later years. Imagine the scene, his projectile crying and generally carrying on like a toddler in full view of his court when something didn't go his way. Thinking about it, there are probably quite a few contemporary types that this is, also a good description of. But not that many of us are comfortable bawling in public and carrying on stamping our feet. But up to comparatively recently, crying and emoting big time were social norms. In the grip of high romanticism, the early Victorian era was awash, literally. It wasn't until Albert died, leaving Victoria a grieving widow, that the vibe changed and emotional exuberance exited stage left. In its place came the stuffy, straight-laced, stiff upper-lipped society we associate with the later Victorian era, at least on the surface. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of stuff bubbling around underneath it that wasn't quite as modest and buttoned up as we've been led to believe. I've done a little bit of writing about that recently. But that change happened in only a couple of decades. So thanks for this legacy, late Victorians. Subsequent generations copped all those repressive sentiments like big boys don't cry and I'll give you something to cry about. I mean, think about the Victorians who are said to have actually covered their table and piano legs to protect women's modesty. But even now, with much more relaxed standards and our buy-in to the concept of emotional intelligence, we're not performative in our grief like our forebears. But the tearjerker movie was a genius invention in a world with so little tolerance for adult tears. Tearjerkers allowed us a legitimate release valve. We could snivel up a storm in a dark auditorium where the tear police's writ didn't run. Of course, penance for this self-indulgence came in that ghastly moment when you had to exit the local Odeon or other cinema, clutching a wad of soggy tissues with bloodshot, morning after panda-like eyes and mascara-streaked cheeks. A blobby red nose and puffed up swollen lips completed the wrung out look. The fact that everyone emerged the same did nothing to diminish the cringe factor of being seen having given into an emotional storm. You could even hear the most blokey coughing manually, trying to camouflage this heinous crime. No one met anyone else's eyes. It was wonderful and embarrassing and deeply cathartic. I repeat, there is nothing like a good cry. But I read an article this week about the absence of tearjerkers from our screens over the last couple of decades. Perhaps with the advent of streaming services, we no longer saw the attraction of collective emoting in the dark. It's just not the same sitting at home blubbing to yourself, your family and/or your companion animals. Although tearjerkers have been Hollywood's secret sauce since the earliest I Want to Be Alone Greta Garbo movies, their heyday is considered to be the 70s and 80s. This time saw a plethora of cry fests like Terms of Endearment, The Way We Were, Love Story, Kramer vs. Kramer, Field of Dreams, E.T., Beaches, Watership Down, and the Streisand-Christopherson version of A Star is Born, and many, many more. These all hit our screens. We cried, and then we cried some more. It was magnificent. Literally, not a dry eye in the house. Then peak tears arrived in around 1997 with the titan of them all, the blockbuster Titanic, and we gave our tear ducts a rest for a while. However, it seems there are stirrings in the wind that it might just be crying time again. Bring it on. I do miss them. I love a good cry, as I said at the beginning. But the article got me pondering what were my all-time guaranteed to open the emotional floodgate films. So I blubbed my way through all of the above and a lot more. But if I want to cry without resorting to watching a movie, if I were an actor getting myself into the zone, I think there are two standouts. Curiously, both are children's films or books, and both are about animals. So what does that say about me? I don't know. I'm not going to pass comment. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But anyway, drum roll. At the pinnacle of my all-time weepies, the 1994 film of Black Beauty, specifically the bit when Beauty sees his lovely dear friend Ginger for the last time alive. I quote, "As if by magic, there she was, my beautiful Ginger. She was skin and bones. What had they done to her?" Beauty and Ginger stand next to each other in a cab rank for a moment. They've both plummeted from their early days of being preferred horses of the local, aristocratic scene, and now they've been descended to being just used up as cab horses. And Beauty remembers when she was young and beautiful and all their happy before times, when men were kind. The next time he sees her, she's being hauled away, lifeless on a cart. God, I'm tearing up as I'm speaking. But it was terrible. It was one of those big Victorian, trying to change the world stories, and it is desperately sad with some beautiful moments. Then, of course, without giving you a spoiler alert, there is Black Beauty himself does come home. He comes home literally to someone that looked after him when he was a colt, so he gets his happy ending. But Black Beauty was my favourite book as a horse-mad little girl, which likely underpins my response to the film, and I still have a copy of the book. The last time I read it, I cried from about halfway through, ending in just about convulsive sobbing at the bittersweet finale. Luckily, it's not a long book. I don't think my intellectual waterworks could have coped. So what's my second one? Well, again, it's another, another, I think probably odd choice, but it always gets to my heart. The evergreen Disney classic Bambi, specifically the bit when a hunter shoots Bambi's mother and he's left all alone in the big forest, gets me every time. And actually, in the third place, I'd probably put another scene from Bambi. It's when we realise his father is watching out for him. And it always brings such a big lump in the throat because this poor little fawn who's all alone in the dangerous, scary forest suddenly realises he actually isn't alone. So it's amazing that the 1942 movie still tears at the heartstrings in a way many more recent ones don't. I didn't actually read the book of Bambi, but I believe it was, it's excellent. And, people talk about whether, the Disney remake that's in the cards, will they tone it down and make it less? I mean, because it was pretty visceral. There was a big forest fire where all the animals had to flee the forest. So, I mean, these films were, they packed a punch in their day. And, I think when I think about them, they really do, they really do bring the waterworks quite easily. But so what are your favourites when you want a good cry? I'd love to hear what you watch, read or listen to give your tear ducts a work up. I'll set up a forum board for your choices and the stories behind them. Why did they get to you? What actually about it was so sort of, emotional that made you actually want to cry. But anyway, having said all that, must run. I'm about to settle in for the evening to watch Freud's Last Interview. With that kind of title, it must be a tearjerker. So I have Chardonnay ready to go and I'm all set for the evening. Box of hankies to the ready. See you next time.